I just wanted to move on lastly, if I may, to
Sure.
your this other book, The Jesus Dynasty, and the conclusion of that, which contains a fascinating observation and a fascinating claim. If I'm just going to read it, just a few sentences. You say on page 287, Muslims do not worship Jesus, who is known as Isa in Arabic, nor do they consider him divine, but they do believe that he was a prophet or messenger of God, and he is called the Messiah in the Quran. However, by affirming Jesus as Messiah, they are attesting to his messianic message, not his mission as a heavenly Christ. There are some rather striking connections between the research I have presented in the Jesus Dynasty and the traditional beliefs of Islam. Now, particularly in the West, to make any connection, I think, between Islam and Jesus is a radical claim, although it's not a radical for historians who know what they're talking about. But could you just elaborate what these connections are that you have discovered between that research you had undertaken and the traditional beliefs of Islam? Because I'm sure our viewers would be absolutely fascinated to hear about this.
Yeah, I have studied a bit. And he was influenced, to accept Jesus, to accept Abraham, to accept Moses, all the prophets. The holy books are the Torah, the Gospels, and the Quran. Even today, you see signs in Muslim countries, these are the scriptures, even though they say they've been polluted. And so there was, of course, you got the rules, the dietary laws about pork and so forth that carry over, circumcision. So it's sort of a strange form of Judaism with Jesus added, but not as God, but as the Messiah. And Muslims do believe that Isa, Jesus, will return and defeat the Antichrist, which is very similar to what Christians say. And then the resurrection of the dead. So there's a sequence of events that Islam also has. It's in the book of Daniel. It's in Mark 13. It's in the book of Revelation. The details vary. But essentially it is, even in the book of Revelation, the kingdoms of the world have become the kingdoms of our God and of his Christ. See? So you've got the God and his anointed one. Allah and his prophet Muhammad, or Jesus, his Messiah. So anointed comes to mean, they do believe he's the Davidic Messiah and so forth. I don't think there's much of, if you think about some of the messianic prophecies in the Hebrew Bible, they would be okay with those. He's anointed, he's empowered by the Spirit, he preaches good news and the truth, and teaches people the way of God. I do want to say, because of, in America at least, there's so much ignorance about Islam, people who say that Allah is not God. I'm sure you seem to know something about Islam. It's important to point this out to our students that, El, Elohim, Eloha, Allah, Al, these are all words for God, which means the force, the power, El, the force of all forces, Elohim. It's the entity who cannot be named. It's a beautiful idea. So Allah is not, Allah is the Muslim God. No, it's not the Muslim God. Allah is the concept of the force of all forces, the creator, the God, the ultimate power.
So my last question to you, if I may, given your knowledge as a professor of religions, do you think Muhammad was a prophet of God?
I guess I would answer it and address it in a different way. Probably not answer it, but address it in a different way. Is that Muhammad seems to me to represent, even with the traditions of the 5 times the prayer and all the things you got to, quote, do as a Muslim that are different from Jews, different from Christians. But in its essence, it seems to represent an Abrahamic faith that has some degree of purity that other forms and expressions of Judaism and Christianity lack. And that is, for example, Judaism in many, many ways, I don't know how you do a percentage on it, but has adopted a kind of Kabbalistic mysticism that is really closer to Gnosticism than, a simple Hebrew Bible kind of reading of the ancient Israelite faith. It has, spheres within spheres and reincarnation and immortal soul and the Kabbalistic tree of being and so forth. So that's very different from
Moses.
Prophet Muhammad taught. So the Prophet Muhammad, when you read the Quran, I read the Quran, I'm sure you have too. And I will say this about it, and back to your question, is Muhammad a prophet? He does get a much clearer vision of what Moses and Jesus were all about at the heart of things than the developed religions of probably all three, meaning Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, meaning it's a man, Abraham, walking in faith with the one God, walk before me, leave your country, leave your land, on a mission to establish moral order in the world and to bring people back to God and so forth. That is, in that sense, and not adding anything to that God. The basic moral standards are just about identical.
Yeah.
In our political and radical situation today, it's hard for people to realize because they think of Islamic jihad and they think of, Sharia law being imposed on people and we behead people and so forth. So some people won't like me saying this, but I think if you think about what are the core elements of the faith, a really strong view of the one God, that God has messengers and prophets that are sent through history, that the people of God are the Jewish people, which Muhammad said, they're the chosen people. Their mission, which they failed in, according to Muhammad and the prophets, was to bring light to the nations. And now we've got this one last chance, and here's the light, and so forth. As you know, when you read the Quran itself, it doesn't come across like if all you had was a Quran, you wouldn't know it was a religion called Islam, really, because Islam just means to submit to God, right?
And it doesn't claim to be, as you say yourself, but it doesn't claim to be a new religion.
No, not
it
at all.
claims to reaffirm the old-time religion of Abraham. So if it did have novelty, then it would undermine its own.
Abraham, Moses, the prophets, and Jesus.
Yeah. So can I just press you on that, if I may, James?